There is none like you. No one else can touch my heart like you do. I could search for all eternity long and find there is none like you. One thing have I desired, forever will I seek, to behold the beauty of His holiness, and to dwell within the presence of the King. Well, how could I ask for more? He's done so much for me, for I have tasted of the goodness of the Lord.
Happy Easter, beloved brethren. Today we celebrate the greatest event in human history, that Jesus conquered the grave and rose from the dead. It is a triumph of light over darkness, the triumph of joy over sorrow. It is the fundamental core of the profession of our Christian faith and the climax of God's salvific work. Those who attended the Easter Vigil Mass would have recognized that the selected readings pointed to gradual process of realization of God's work of salvation in human history. The first reading, taken from the book of Genesis chapter 1, recounted the story of creation that climaxed with the creation of man. The second reading, taken from the book of Genesis chapter 22, brought to us the account of the sacrifice of Abraham, our father in faith. The third reading, that was taken from Exodus chapter 14, recounted the story of the liberation of the people of Israel from Egypt. That was followed by Exodus chapter 15, which is the song of the liberated. And then we entered into the prophets. The prophecy of Isaiah chapter 54 and the prophecy of Isaiah chapter 55. We also had the book of Baruch chapters 3 and 4 and the prophecy of Ezekiel chapter 36. These selected prophetic texts reassure us of the ever-faithful love of God, the desire of God to realize His covenant with His people. All the readings we had last night climaxed with the proclamation of the joy of resurrection, that Jesus has conquered death and brought life to us again. And that's why this feast is considered as the mother of all feasts we celebrate in the Catholic Church. It is the inauguration of the 8th day. The 8th day is the day without limits. Days normally are limited to 7. But when one enters into relationship with Jesus Christ, who has risen, he enters the 8th day. This was the theological projection of the church in the earliest century. And that's why baptistries were constructed in octagonal shape, that is, having different faces that when we put them together, they come into 8, where people were baptized. The purpose was to indicate that whoever recognizes Jesus Christ and submits to Him in baptism enters into the 8th day. The 8th day is the eternal day, day without limit. You begin to live a life that is not bounded again by death. And that is the joy of the Easter proclamation, that Jesus has risen from the dead and the Father has made Him the Lord of the living and the dead. Paul will tell us that because of the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, nothing again can separate us from the love of God. And he said it clearly in Romans chapter 8, verse 35. Not even persecution and death, because in all things we are more than conquerors by the virtue of the one who has redeemed us. The same account will also help us to understand that with the proclamation of the Easter message, the Father has brought to culmination the work of redemption He started long ago. And that is what we celebrate when we recognize Easter as the crowning point of the salvific work. Because here, all the projects of God's salvific mission for the redemption of man is brought to a culminant point. And that's why the Easter celebration is the heart of all gatherings of the people of God. We gather every Sunday because Jesus rose on a Sunday. Every Sunday gathering becomes a commemoration of the great event of Easter. It is a prolongation of the same unique event that Jesus conquered the grave and brought life to us. Coming in contact with the Christian faith grants us the grace to come out from a limited way of perceiving life to see beyond what is visible. And that's why Paul will tell us in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 14, without the resurrection, our proclamation is without substance, and our faith is in vain. This draws attention to understand that once one begins to understand the message of resurrection, the person has entered into real communion with Jesus Christ. That's why every Easter Sunday, the church presents us with accounts of the gospel according to John, chapter 20, from verse 1 to 9. The structure of this account is interesting because it offers us the opportunity to see that the recognition of the risen Christ is not immediately possible to the simple way of looking at things. And that's why John presents us with three important figures: Mary Magdalene, Peter, and the disciple that Jesus loved, and linked three of them with the encounter with the empty tomb, and then uses three important verbs that mark seeing in their various grace. He first of all used blepo, then used tereo, and then used orao. The gradual announcement of the message of resurrection in this form helps us in our human weakness and limitation to pass from what is visible and recognize the power of life that lies beyond what the eye can see. John the Evangelist started the account by telling us that early morning, the first day of the week, when it was still dark, Mary of Magdala went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed. In verse 1, she ran back to Peter and the disciple that Jesus loved and informed them that had taken the Lord away from the tomb. Peter and the other disciple, they ran together, but the disciple that Jesus loved came to the tomb before Peter. He looked to the tomb and saw the linen cloths, but he did not enter. Peter, who came lately, entered the tomb and saw that the linen cloths were not disarranged, as if the Lord had evaporated. The other disciple who came first entered after Peter, saw, and believed. The link between these three important disciples that we have as the first witnesses of the risen Christ in the account of John, they help us to understand that the recognition of the power of resurrection needs, first of all, a deeper encounter with Jesus Christ, enthusiasm to be with him, a progression from the simple way of seeing to recognition of life that lies beyond seeing. This is demonstrated, first of all, by linking these three persons with the tomb. The Greek word used here to mark the tomb is mnemeion, which means a place to remember, a place to recall. Three of them went to the tomb because of the affection they had for Jesus Christ. They wanted to prolong that remembrance of his presence. They prolonged his image. The hunger to be with him lingered in their minds even after death. This is the first thing we notice in this account, that recognition of the risen Lord begins with this inner desire and enthusiasm that marked these 3 disciples that went to the tomb. Mary Magdalene ran very early in the morning, a sign of one who was enthusiastic about the Lord. The disciple that Jesus loved ran faster than Peter. He was anxious to witness what had happened. When Peter came to the tomb, he did not just stop at the entrance, at the door of the tomb. He entered. This gradual process of encounter with the empty tomb, with 3 different images, they help us to see that the revelation of resurrection came through this desire, openness to be with the Lord, to manifest the love they had for the Lord. And that's why each of them had a role to play in the progressive openness of the light of resurrection that is limited in the way we perceive our realities. Our human nature cannot immediately apprehend the power that lies beyond the eyes. And this is what we notice also in the choice of the verbs that Evangelist John uses to mark this revelation. The first, with Mary Magdalene, who went to the tomb in verse 1, John indicated that she saw that the stone had been removed. The word used here in Greek language to mark the seeing of Mary Magdalene is blepo, which means ordinary seeing that does not go beyond what the eye can see. When the disciple that Jesus loved came to the tomb, before Peter arrived, he also saw. He never entered. The word used there in verse 5 is blepo, which means ordinary seeing. When Peter entered the tomb and saw the linen cloths, the evangelist changed the verb from simple seeing that had marked Mary Magdalene and the disciple that Jesus loved, blepo, to now tereo, which means seeing and contemplating. Peter entered the tomb and saw the linen cloths in their order of arrangement. When the disciple that Jesus loved entered with Peter, he saw. The word used there is oraro, and believed. Oraro means seeing beyond what the eye can see. So while the sin of Mary Magdalene is marked with blepo, physical seeing, that of Peter is marked with seeing and contemplating, and the disciple that Jesus loved who entered the tomb after Peter, oraro, saw beyond what the eye can see and believed. These gradual steps that evangelist John took to help the human poor way of looking at things to gradually progress and move beyond what the eye can see, to recognize the power that lies beyond the eyes, is the step that is recommended for every disciple. We begin with encountering the Lord with what is visible. And with encounters we have with what is visible, we begin to intensify our steps to intimacy with the Lord. From there, we begin to look beyond what is visible. Our faith matures from the moment we begin to see life that lies beyond this earthly city. This is the experience of these 3 disciples. The gradual step of seeing to believing what is not immediately visible to the eyes marks the climax of the recognition of the power of resurrection. And this is what we notice also in our weaknesses when we are not able to recognize that a man who has passed from this earthly city will still have life in him. Before a dead man, we don't see any other thing beyond the lifeless body of the man lying before us. But the power of resurrection gives us the grace, illumines our eyes to look beyond that is visible and go and embrace what is not immediately visible. This is what the disciple that Jesus loved helped us today to understand. Once we're able to come to this level in our profession of Christian faith, we have come to the real encounter with the Lord. Our faith is no longer limited with what is visible, what is perceivable through the eyes, but what goes beyond the eyes. And this is what the announcement of resurrection helps us to understand. It is a victory of light over darkness. Because our human nature is blocked away by darkness. We can't see beyond what the eye can look at. There is darkness when there is no light. But the experience of resurrection allows us to see the light that shines beyond darkness. And this embrace with the light ushers us into the new age. Pope Benedict XVI says that the resurrection is the dawn of the day. We enter into the day where light shines. We are not limited any longer by the difficulties and persecutions and worries that can impede our true vision of life. This process is meant for every disciple. And once we're able to encounter Jesus Christ at this level, our proclamation of faith will no longer be limited by what people say or how they see us, but that conviction of life without end. This is the faith of the martyr. This is the power of all the prophets and all the evangelists and all those who have witnessed to Jesus Christ in the various stages and generations that have proclaimed the Christian faith. One of the clearest examples to help us see the identification of our faith through real encounter with the risen Christ is brought very clearly to us through the accounts of the martyrs of Abyssinia. Abyssinia is that part of North Africa that today could represent the part that we recognize as Tunisia. And that was in 304 AD during the time of Emperor Diocletian. This emperor had issued an edict that nobody has a right to gather on Sundays. And the edict was so strong that under the pen of death, anyone who was caught celebrating the presence of the Lord or the victory of the Lord on a Sunday was executed. 49 Christians were caught celebrating on a Sunday. And the emperor, before executing these Christians, wanted to know why they insisted on Sunday gathering. And the Christians replied to the emperor, "Sine Dominico non possumus." Without Sunday, we cannot live. That brings to our memory what resurrection is all about. This profession that these Christians made assures us that if you remove resurrection from the life of a Christian, the life becomes only an earthly life. Without Sunday, without the message of the risen Lord, without our faith in resurrection, we cannot live. This was what Paul discovered when he considered every other thing as rubbish in Philippians chapter 3. For only the power to recognize the risen Christ, he says, "I consider other things as nothing. Only my faith in the risen Christ gives me joy and that assures me of the security of life itself." Peter himself will announce the same message when he was sent to the house of Cornelius to affirm the power of Christ who rose from the dead. Peter said, "We are so sure because we ate and drank with him when he rose from the dead." It's an identification that nothing can change. It's a way to announce the power that lies beyond the grave is greater and stronger than any other thing that can threaten life on this earth. It is on this point that we rejoice greatly, all of us who have been brought into the light of the risen Christ, because you have come to meet life without end. We have come to meet joy without end. We have come to embrace light that darkness can never conquer again. On this note, beloved brethren, I wish all of you a happy celebration of the Mother of all feasts and a happy Sunday. Be blessed.